thrown in jail for doing the same thing. I think that's quite a problem to have across the board, which can be frustrating for a lot of street artists. Banks and paint the piece to stimulate conversation about health and physical issues, which is global, not just national. But the media talk about how much it's doing. The previous piece that he did in Wales was in Port Talbot. It was a commentary on the air quality in Port Talbot. Okay. Instead of kind of addressing then the issue of air quality or of COVID-19 or whatever the political piece is talking about, people start talking about how great it is, and maybe we should put some perspex over it and turn it into a tourist attraction.
Has it become self-defeating in that respect then, Bryson? You're better off hiring someone perhaps lesser known to put up a mural that you know is going to stay there and not be regarded by art buyers around the world as something worth having. Therefore, the message stays there forever, rather than it being hacked off and sold and ending up in the private collection of some very rich person.
Absolutely. I think the message can be lost because of brands, which is Banksy, essentially. It's not to say it's a bad thing. I mean, I think personally, quite often it's on the right side of the fence, politically speaking. But people can't see the message anymore because they see the money. I think perhaps, as you just said. Whereas lesser-known artists, their piece might actually create the viewer to think more and actually consider what the piece is actually trying to, the point that the piece is trying to get across.
Dr. Raphael Schachter joins us, who's an anthropologist on research into graffiti and street art. What do you think of what has been done in Bristol, the Mark Quinn sculpture that has gone up, guerrilla sculpture erecting?
Yeah. Hey, Nihal. Yeah,
Hi.
thanks for inviting me on. Yeah, so I think it's an interesting work. Look, it's clearly a powerful work. So it's very reminiscent of the work that Quinn did of Alison Laffer, which was on the Ford Flint, which was a famous work, especially during the Paralympics in 2012. She was a pregnant, disabled lady. It's a very powerful kind of statement about representation, about who we should have on pedestals, about marginalised and minority groups in public space who aren't normally represented. But with that said, I think there's already been kind of a concern about the fact this was Mark Quinn, who was the author, the producer of this sculpture, that it was a white artist. So this is not about intent, but clearly, Quinn's intent is honourable. But one of the key kind of things of this kind of post-11 world that we're living in is passing money. So it wasn't necessary for Mark Quinn and the white artist to be doing this himself as an ally. You could commission a black artist, given your huge infrastructural support. So whether that's a very famous black artist like Peter Smith, Keith Piper, or younger generation artists. Hackney, where I live, and young black artist Thomas J. Price has just been given a commission and produced a sculpture around Windrush. And I just think there is this kind of concern about a white voice being a voice that is choosing what to produce. So it's about Alistair, it's about support rather than about your opinion. So I think
Does that not further divide and subdivide though? When
I don't think so at all. I think it's about when you look at the artwork is hugely dominated by white galleries, white artists, white infrastructure. And there are so many British black artists who need support. And I think the whole point of BLM is seeing the infrastructural issues in our society where, we think if we could do something, Mark Quinn is a powerful, well-known artist, given huge commissions. So at that point, we should be thinking about the fact that we need to push that support out wider. Hugely admirable. I'd also be interested to know what the community, the black community in Bristol want now. Have they been consulted? What sort of work do they want? Do they just want another person on pedestal? Because that's the other issue. We're past people on pedestals now. We're past this idea of permanency that we can talk about in terms of banking as well. Do we want the bronze, marble monuments? We want to have something which functions, more equitably today.
That's an interesting point, Bryce, about permanence. Do you believe that your works should be permanent? I mean, graffiti art over the decades, certainly early times, people would put pieces up, and then of course there was someone else who would put a piece up over it. You would take photos of it for posterity and move on.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think none of us are permanent here on planet Earth, are we? And for anyone to sort of say, well, I deserve to be permanent, is kind of missing it, I think, a little bit. And it's the same with the statue issue. Who's to say that Colston should be permanent? And it's certainly not erasing history by getting rid of his statue. Where this is all part of history. The statue of Jen Reed is part of history. It's taking down a white male slave trader and replacing it with a black female activist. Which is embodying the spirit of the BLM protests, highlighting racial injustice and institutional racism at the highest level. It's kind of saying that nothing's perfect, and we're all evolving. We're all trying to, I guess, learn and talk about education. This is the Jen Reed piece as well as the banking piece. They're all about starting a conversation. The Jen Reed piece is about empowering people. I totally. Hearing Raphael's views on that, about almost like, because it is trying to take away the tokenism almost of like a white person kind of speaking on behalf of black people, but at the same time, it's undeniably a good thing.
But what? Yeah, go on, Bryce.
Sorry, yeah, just the fact that she is there, and I think it's been mentioned that that it is a temporary and designed to be a temporary piece, which is all about sparking this debate and having a conversation, which is really important. And it's the same with Banksy and the COVID-19 piece.
Is it not slightly problematic though, Raphael, when at a time all people have been encouraged to have a conversation, challenge their own ideas, that someone who does wish to make a statement with Jen Reed at the heart of it as the protester is told that they shouldn't be doing that?
I mean, I think we've got enough white artists making statements. I think making statements and taking up air, yes, interesting, and I support it. But I would support more like a wider structural statement by saying, okay, I'm going to support a young black artist. I'm going to support an artist from the community. But to hear what they have to say, I think we've got enough, artists, powerful white artists, who've got a lot of air that already have that space, that have the oxygen in the room. So I think it's important for this moment to think about not just who's in public space, but who's being represented, who's doing that representation. Parliament Square, there's one statue of the woman, and that's the only statue by a female sculptor, Gillian Waring. So, it's not just about who's being represented, but how they're being represented. I think that's what's important, and I think, I don't want to come on here and just be like, oh, Mark Richards, and that's not my business to say that. What I'm saying is that I think what would have been a more powerful statement is to think about who gets to represent, not just who is represented.
And this might actually help that process also, because I think for a lot of people who haven't thought that deep into it, are reacting to just seeing a black person on a plinth, and particularly a female activist. Perhaps now, because it wasn't a commissioned piece essentially by Bristol Council or whoever, once this statue comes down, then exactly what you just said is totally right. It's about then, well, who will then get the commission, if there is a commission, to make an image that will stand on that plinth, and perhaps now is the point in history that black and minority voices and are put at every level, to be those people who can make that change and who can actually create the pieces that we look at.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there. Dr. Raphael Shakhtar, who's an anthropologist, thank you very much for getting in contact with us. Sorry for being on the show. And Bryce Davies, graffiti artist in Cardiff, thank you to you as well. Now time for Drive with Anna and Tony.
Thank you, Nahal. Hello, welcome to the programme. We're going to talk about the fact that a huge drop in the world's population is on the way. We'll look at why and the difference it might make.
We will talk to the Army Major who's walking 700 miles in his bare feet.
And next summer's British and Irish Lions tour of South Africa is on, so we'll be speaking to Sir Ian McGeegan.
On digital, BBC Sounds, smart speaker and online.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live. BBC News at 4 o'clock. This is Jane Royce. The Prime Minister has, for the first time, committed to an independent inquiry into the coronavirus pandemic, but stressed now was not the time. He said it would not be right to devote huge amounts of official time to an inquiry when the UK was in the middle of a pandemic. He also didn't stipulate what form the inquiry would take. Mr Johnson was speaking during Prime Minister's questions in the Commons, where he said areas facing a local lockdown had to work hard to keep coronavirus under control. Leicester is subject to extra restrictions at the moment, and new measures were announced for Blackburn and Darwin yesterday. The Prime Minister told MPs the best way to avoid further hardship was by doing everything possible to contain the virus.
The best thing possible is for them all to work hard, as Blackburn with Darwin have done, for instance, to get the virus down and to make sure that they're able to open up again.
Nicola Sturgeon's warned people in Scotland to stick to social distancing rules and said she would not hesitate to close bars and restaurants again if the coronavirus started to spread. The Scottish First Minister was speaking as lockdown rules were relaxed further, allowing hairdressers, pubs, restaurants and some other venues to reopen. The Chinese government's launched a strongly worded attack on the UK's decision to drop Huawei from its 5G networks, warning deeds reap results. Beijing has accused the government of working with the US to discriminate, oppress and exclude Chinese firms. A new study's warning that the world is ill-prepared for large falls in fertility rates, which could have a jaw-dropping impact on societies. Academics at the University of Washington in Seattle say nearly every country could have shrinking populations by the end of the century, with the number of people living in countries such as Spain, Italy, Poland, Japan and Thailand halving in size. Professor Stein Emil Volset led the research.
Our difference all comes from the fertility estimates. We project that women will have fewer children than the United Nations does. And this declining trend in fertility is ongoing all across the world.
The BBC's political discussion programme, The Andrew Neil Show, has been axed. The corporation, which is facing increased financial pressure because of the coronavirus pandemic, is cutting a further 70 jobs from its news division. That's on top of 450 announced earlier this year. Apple has been told it will not have to pay Ireland €13 billion in back taxes after winning an appeal at the European Union's second highest court. It overturns a 2016 ruling which found the tech giant had been given illegal tax breaks by Dublin. The EU's General Court said it had annulled that decision because there was not enough evidence to show Apple broke EU competition rules. The Dutch MEP Paul Tang has criticised the ruling.
I pay more taxes than Apple, for that matter. Many people pay more taxes. I think people find this deeply unfair, and there's also politics.
And that's the BBC News. It's 3 minutes past 4.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live. On digital, BBC Sounds, smart speaker and online.
The M5 is closed in Worcestershire. It's on the southbound side. A lorry has jackknifed and it's across all 3 lanes between Junction 7 at Worcester and Junction 8 for the M50. It happened at about 2:20, and since then they've also closed 2 lanes on the opposite side. So on the northbound side between 8 and 7, you'll also find those lane closures in place. Traffic can squeeze past in one of the lanes, but long delays, taking over an hour to get through now. On that northbound side, the M1 in Derbyshire on the northbound side and 29 in Chesterfield, there's a broken down lorry. It's being recovered and 1 lane closed for the work. The M40, and there's a breakdown. It's at Junction 2, southbound at Beaconsfield. M275 in Hampshire, northbound, heading up to the M27, and that's at Portsmouth. At Junction 12 of the M27, they've closed one of the lanes now. It's because of accident investigation work. Fuel was spilled as well. So between 2 and the M27, you'll find delays. And the A13 in Essex is closed. That's because of an accident, and recovery is still underway heading towards London between Tilbury and the A1012. Warner Merchant, 5 Live Travel.
Hello, welcome to Drive. It's just a short one today. We're off for the football at 5:30, but still lots to pack in. We'll speak very soon about that striking statue that has gone up in Bristol overnight to replace the one of the slave trader Edward Colston that was torn down. This is a a statue. It's a sculpture of Jen Reid, the Black Lives Matter protester. So we're going to be looking at what it means, whether it should stay. Lots to get into with that.
Yeah, I mentioned we're going to talk to this army major. He's trying to walk 700 miles from Land's End to Edinburgh in his bare feet. He's 225 miles in. And we're told his feet are a mess, but we are hopefully going to tweet his feet a little bit later on. So if you're of a strong disposition, well, remember I lost about 1,000 followers when I tweeted my feet,
yes,
and all
exactly.
I was talking about was my suntan. He's going to be in slightly more serious condition. So anyway, we'll talk to Major Chris a little bit later on.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing him, not so much so on the feet. And also, we were talking about this new Tiny Happy Lives project yesterday, which is basically aiming to fill the gap when it comes to that bit of your child's life between the midwives all being there and helping and looking after you, and the bit when they go to school, those few years in between where you might feel like you need a bit of extra help, but you're not sure where to get it from. We're going to talk a bit later in this hour about ways to communicate with your kids, developmental, educational psychology. Nursery rhymes is what we're going to focus on, but it kind of got me thinking, you know, when your kids are small and there's always some particular bit of music or a song or something that you use to calm them down, or you know, that'll just shut them up and entrance them, or whatever it is, help them go to sleep. And there's some classic ones and some slightly out there ones. It might be a TV theme or whatever it is. So we've got a couple that worked for us, but share yours.
It could also be to get your child to do something. I say this because Annie, you were on with me a little bit earlier when you mentioned this, and someone's texted to say we used to sing "Get Your Crocs On, Johnny" to our son to the tune of "Get Your Crocs On" by Primary School.
Yeah, exactly. That
so
kind
it's
of thing.
adapting music to reach an end. Right, it is Drive on 5 Live. Thank you very much for being with us this afternoon. It's just coming round to 4:05.
5 Live Breakfast.
Focusing on what's happening in Scotland as it begins its biggest relaxation of restrictions.
Parks, hairdressers, restaurants, cinemas, places of worship, childcare settings, they're all open.
Nina Steele is landlady at the Park Bar in Finniston in Glasgow.
Yesterday I phoned a few of my customers and just reassured them that, you know, when they come in they'll be coming into a safe environment, you know, and I've explained table service, social distancing.
Do you have some characters who normally like to be up at the bar?
We do, yes. The ones I've spoken to are, you know, are quite happy because at the end of the day it's for their health and well-being that we're making sure that, you know, it's a safe place to come. Hopefully they'll keep coming back.
5 Live Breakfast. Back tomorrow from 6. This is BBC Radio 5 Live. Available on the BBC Sounds app. 5 Live Drive with Anna Foster and Tony Livesey.
Now, did you know there are likely to be far fewer children born across the world in the not too distant future, meaning that while the global population is set to peak in 2064, we could see it drop from there by almost 1 billion by the end of the century.
Yeah, almost 100 countries, including Spain, Italy, see that population. And work, as well as having greater access to contraception. Professor Sarah Harper is the director of the University of Oxford Institute of Ageing Population.
We've known this for quite some time, because when we think of ageing populations, it's really all about falling fertility or falling about childbearing. And I think we have to be a little bit careful, because in actual fact there are some presumptions in this report. One of them is that African women are going to have the same opportunity to control their childbearing as other women, and that really isn't clear. At the moment, there's very few countries in sub-Saharan Africa, for example, that have less than 4 children. Many of them have 6, 7 and 8 children on average. So I think the way to look at it is that we really do not want our population to get, in fact, larger than it is. We know it is going to grow. It's currently around about 7.5 billion, and the UN predicts that it'll go to about 10.5 billion by the end of the century, and this report says it'll go to just under 9 billion. So we know that our population is going to grow, and we know that's not good for our environment.
Well, she went on to explain why the birth rate here in the UK looks set to remain relatively stable. Our population is predicted to peak at 75 million in 2063 and then fall to around 71 million by 2100.
Our population was continuing to grow, but it was also continuing to be young. because of course one of the things we have to take into account, it isn't just fertility and mortality, that's children being born and older people in particular dying, it's migration. And we were able to keep a pretty young population because we had lots of younger migrants coming in, and they drove our economies and kept our standard of living high. We will age if we prevent migrants coming into this country. And if you look at the old countries in Europe, and I think the report highlights this, Italy and Spain and Greece, for example, are going to get much older because they've never had the kind of migration that, say, Britain and France has had. So Britain is well prepared. We've been preparing for our aging population for some time, but we have relied a lot on migrants coming in, particularly to care for our older adults. We know this. I mean, COVID has really highlighted this.
So how are we going to have to adapt to the new makeup of our population in the future? Well, Holly Holder is from the Centre for Ageing Better, which looks at how to support people as they grow older. Hello, Holly.
Hello.
Professor Sarah Harper was saying there that we've done a reasonably good job at this. Is there anything we could improve when it comes to actually not just helping, but also making sure our older population are integrated?
Definitely. I mean, it's a really fascinating study, and I think Sarah's given us lots of key things there to think about. What we do as an organisation is to try to, first of all, change the narrative. I think if you look at some of the reporting that's been about this study, it's all so doom and gloom, you know, it's a tragedy that we're going to have all of these older people and not enough babies. And actually, we really need to think about the opportunities and the contributions that older people make to our society. And in terms of really practical things that we should be thinking about, there are a few different things. So we need to make sure that our housing, for example, is safe and accessible and supports people who might have a growing population who have got mobility issues, for example. We need to make sure that our homes are free from damp and cold so that we don't increase the number of people who have health problems. So we know that we're living for longer, but unfortunately we're not spending those increased years in good health. So what can we do to make sure that our population is as healthy as it can be, that we've got a healthy diet, promoting exercise, and other bits and pieces, for example, in our workplaces. So can we make sure that every person who is able to be in work is able to do so until a retirement age of their choice?
I was going to ask about that actually, Holly. Are we, as a society, a bit skewed? Do we tend to, when people get to a certain age, suddenly assume that they are a burden rather than actually draw on their experience?
So in the workplace, definitely, and that actually happens when people hit about 40. We've done some work on thinking about their experiences, and a really high proportion of people think that if they were to lose their job, they wouldn't be new hires, for example, because they think that employers see them as past this and they're not able to keep up. We know that 50 doesn't reflect that at all. And certainly, yes, if you think about people who retire, for example, we talk about that as being a burden on the state. Actually, a huge proportion of older people provide childcare. They still contribute as consumers to our society. So we do need to think about, as you use the word integration there, how do we make sure that people are enabled to do the things that they want to do and to contribute to society, and that we make sure that we create a sort of intergenerational enjoyment, fun, benefits that we would all like to see and experience as we get older.
Yeah, there's a lot to think about, isn't there? Thank you, Holly. It's food for thought. Holly Holder from the Centre for Ageing Better. If you have any ideas, any suggestions, any ways you think it could or should work, get in touch. We'll talk about this more next hour, 85058, if you want to drop us a text.
We're going to talk about that new statue that's appeared in Bristol in just a second, a representation of a Black Lives Matter protester on the place where the statue of the slave trader Edward Colston was taken down and thrown into the harbour. We'll talk about that in just a second. Before that, later in the programme, as Anna mentioned at the start.
Can I ask a question?
What?
Are your toenails particularly long at the moment?
No, don't. That's my dog. He came for a bum scratch and I thought it was safe. So mine was out, and now he wants it.
No, it's fine. As long as
wish you wouldn't talk about
as
my
long as it's
toenails
his
on air.
as long as it's his little claws I can hear on the floor and not yours.
What do you think I am, some sort of raptor?
I don't know. It was just making me uncomfortable. I just had to clear it up. I feel better now. Carry on.
So he's sat down now, so you've offended him as well. Anyway, we're going to talk later on about nursery rhymes and just the way, little tricks that you use to deal with your children to get them to calm down, to get them to go to sleep, whatever. Becky in Swansea, do let us know yours, 85058. Becky in Swansea's been on. Evening all, when she was a very small baby, our eldest daughter would not settle down in the evenings. We tried everything, including herbal baths. We turned the TV on in frustration one night and the Emmerdale theme came. It was like a magic wand. We used it for years. And we still watch it occasionally now, and she's a 21-year-old anthropology student. We don't think the show will finish there. She's been a vet. She's been a vet when she's 35. If anybody I've got a grudge.
Yeah, somebody
so
very
that's
dramatic. You see, this is the thing. So I've this particular one. This is the exact version on YouTube that we used when we couldn't find the original. So this is a music box that my mum and dad had. Here we go. When my now 7-year-old was tiny. And it's Claire de Lune, and you wound it up and it would play it. So when we went to their house, it would just magically soothing, and you'd see his little eyelids getting heavy, and everything would just relax down. And the music box version was, I know, it's lovely, isn't it? The music box version was the best, but obviously we didn't always have that. So this was the YouTube version that I used to just grab in desperate moments. But you see, even now, and it's funny because when I went to look for this earlier as well, I hadn't heard it for ages. It made me feel a little, you get a little bit choked in your throat, because it reminded me of being tiny.
It's like what Radio 4 used to play when they were closing down at the end of the night.
It's lovely, isn't it? It's Claire de Lune, by the way, by Debussy, just in case you're wondering.
Now, mine's slightly different. Mine's along the Emmerdale theme, really, because this programme had just started when my first child was born. She was in bed trying to get her off, and this theme tune we were taping it and playing it each one after itself, if you know what I mean. Is our equivalent of Claire de Lune.
Hey baby, I hear the blues are calling, tossed salads and scrambled eggs. Quite stylish.
Which is relaxing in its own way, don't you?
No, it is. It's great. It's very funky. This relaxed me as well.
But I don't know what to do with those tossed salads and scrambled eggs.
So she's neither a chef, a comedian, radio host.
None of those. How did you record it? Did you have it on a tape or something?
What?
How did you record it? Did you have it on a tape or something?
You record it on videotape, and then every time it was on, we'd record just the theme tune. We had it, kind of had it on loop.
That's brilliant. If you've got one to add, by the way, we'll try and dig some of them out as well. You can tweet if you want, at BBC5Live, or you can text 85058. Let us know. And they can be nice, soothing ones, or they can be, if they're outlandish as well, we like that. Just tell us the story behind it.
Good stuff. Right, it is 17 minutes past 4 on Drive. Next summer's British and Irish Lions tour of South Africa will go ahead as planned, despite talk of it being moved due to the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic. The global rugby calendar has been completely reassessed, and this was thought it might be part of it, but it isn't. So the Lions are going to play 8 matches in total, including 3 tests against the world champions in July and August of next year, coincidentally, when the Olympics are taking place. Sir Ian McGeegan played on 2 Lions tours and has been head coach for a record-breaking 4 and joins us now. Sir Ian, hi to you. Thank you very much for talking to us.
Good afternoon.
What do you make of this decision?
I'm pleased. I think had it not been made until later, it becomes more complicated. At least I think now, players, coaches, everything can be planned, and I know we're looking at 30,000 plus supporters wanting to be there, so it all helps, I think, in the organisation for what should be an outstanding tour.
Yeah, well, you've mentioned supporters, we'll touch on that now. Hopefully they'll be able to travel, because we've talked about many events that are managing to survive without crowds, and the Ryder Cup's been cancelled for that very reason. The players felt it wouldn't be the same without them. An Alliance tour wouldn't necessarily be the same, would it, without many Brits following over? It'd be a shame if they can't go.
It would. I think the watershed moment was that 97 tour in South Africa, where suddenly there was 20,000 more than there'd ever been in the past, and it's just grown since then. And the supporters, particularly 4 countries coming together, is such a part of that whole atmosphere that is engendered when the Lions go on tour. and I think it has made it a very special sporting event.
There was talk, we mentioned it, there was talk of playing it in autumn to fit in with this new calendar that's being put together, but there are delays on the calendar, so the Lions had to plunge now. And the danger there, is it not, Sir Ian, is that some of the players might be tired? They'll have only just finished the Premiership season, for example.
Yes, on the one hand they might, but it probably won't be a full season. You'd hope there'd be fewer games over the full season, although obviously there's midweek games going in to finish the Premiership, which in some respects could be questionable on player welfare. But I'm hoping that there is some thought goes into the planning for the way the whole season will look prior to the Lions tour, and that they might even build in a little bit of a week or 2 week break before the Lions go to South Africa, because again, from a player
playing in the second tier. So if I can just briefly recrown you Lions coach, how would you react to that? The fact that many of the Lions squad, or a section of them, might ultimately come from the Championship. How would you deal with that?
I'd be delighted, because you can almost plan a playing season like a centrally contracted player, that you'll have the international programme with England, the preparation for the Lions, and there'll be Premiership games in the period up to Christmas, and then Championship games for which the players can be selected as and when is required. So you can almost manage an ideal playing programme leading up to the tour. So the players from Saracens, I would anticipate arriving on the tour very fit and very fresh.
Yeah, just a final question, really, just for those who aren't really who are listening to this, who aren't really rugby aficionados. What is it about that red shirt? Can you describe to us the moment pulling it on? What does it mean to rugby players?
I still think as a player it's the biggest jersey you can wear, and it's great even in the professional era that to players there are things very personal to a jersey. There's a legacy that goes with the jersey that I think all the players respect, and the fact that you are selected out of your own country to go with 3 other countries, I think is totally unique, and with an environment which challenges you as an individual in a very different way. But when you get it right, there's no feeling like it winning a Lions Test match.
Will you be getting out there if you can?
I would love to be out there, so I'm hopeful that I might be there, yes.
Okay, well, good. Enjoy the tour when it does take place, Sir Ian McGeechan. Thank you very much for being with us this afternoon on 5 Live. Thank you. It is Drive with Anna and Tony, 4:22.
There are some great suggestions, great memories of things that you used to play to your kids to see them when they were little. We'll do some of those very soon. Let's talk before that, though, about the fact that Boris Johnson has promised an independent inquiry, in his words, into the coronavirus pandemic. It is the first time that he's committed to holding one. He made the announcement during PMQs earlier in response to a question from the acting leader of the Liberal Democrats,
Mr. Speaker, as I've told the House several times, I do not believe that now, in the middle of combating, still as we are, a pandemic, is the right moment to devote huge amounts of official time to an inquiry. But of course, Mr. Speaker, we will seek to learn the lessons of this pandemic in the future, and certainly we will have an independent inquiry into what happened.
Well, our political correspondent is Layla Nafi. Layla, that was just a flavour of it, but I noticed that no date was mentioned. Was one referred to in the wider speech, or do we not know yet?
No, I mean, there was no detail in PMQs other than that you just played, and certainly no other details have been forthcoming from Downing Street since. So, you know, this is definitely the further the Prime Minister has gone in talking about this. He's talked in the past about, yes, there will be a need to learn lessons at some point in the future, and it's clearly something that the Liberal Democrats in particular have been pressing on, talking about having a public inquiry now, sort of running in parallel to the response while it's ongoing. committing, and the Prime Minister has rejected that, which you heard him say then that this was not the time to sort of tie up various people in an inquiry while there were still live issues, as it were. But yes, committing, using the word certainly and using the word independent are definitely markers in the sand, and this will be something that he is held to. But of course, an independent inquiry could mean many things, because what is independence? It could mean independent of government, so could that be something that MPs do in a sort of select committee format? Could it be something that's a kind of formal inquiry led by a judge? These sort of run on for months and months. How will that work? When will the sort of end of the coronavirus response be judged to have come? Are we talking about sort of once coronavirus has been eradicated completely? That doesn't look like it's coming anytime soon. So many unanswered questions, but certainly I think Boris Johnson putting a marker in the sand that he is going to commit to some sort of body, some sort of independent review of the way the coronavirus response has been handled.
Yeah, I'm moving into the realms of hypotheticals here, but in theory, the pandemic could last so long that there might even be a change of administration.
Well, exactly.
I necessarily have to stick to that.
Well, we're talking in kind of complete unknowns here at the moment, but I think it's been an issue that is around and is being talked about in Westminster. This idea that there needs to be, because in those early days, it's almost hard to imagine back now, isn't it? Sort of those early days and months when so much is unknown, and things are evolving still at quite a pace. And there are definitely times, there is definitely a desire from certainly in opposition parties, the Lib Dems in particular, have been saying there needs to be some sort of forum where reflections can happen, lessons can be learned. Perhaps for some people, blame can be attributed for certain decisions, and pinpointing who made what decision when on the basis of what information, and collating that, because obviously there are different things going on at the moment in parallel. There are select committee hearings, there are sort of independent groups publishing things, there are, obviously interviews going on, but I think having a space where everything is looked at in the round is certainly something that is getting increasing traction, and something the Prime Minister has, made a more of a firm commitment to today than he has up until now.
Thank you, Layla. Layla Nathie there, our political correspondent.
We've got a little item running this afternoon then that I'm now going to call, very cleverly, I think, Top of the Tots. Do you see what I've done there?
That's all right. That's not bad.
Songs that you've used to gerrymander your child to sleep. Stephen says, my daughter Emily, of a few months, suffered badly from colic. It was always worse in the evening. I'd come home from a hard day's work, and a few evenings a week her mum would go to teach evening classes at the local university in Mortimer. So the evenings could be a difficult time trying to soothe my daughter. The only thing that would calm her would be to place her face down along my forearm, her head cradled in my hand, with Wet, Wet, Wet's Love Is All Around from Four Weddings and a Funeral playing on loop fairly loudly. In the background, I'd walk around the house gently rocking until she fell asleep. This would sometimes last for hours, and I'd often put her in a cot only minutes before her mum walked back through the door at 9. She would have been 9 before that was not number one. That was number one for ages.
Oh, you could hear it everywhere for a while, couldn't you?
Yeah, he says, I can't listen to the song now without memories flooding back with a tear in my eye.
You see, that's the thing, these do take you back. Dave in Wales says, I had to hum the tune to Star Trek when my son was young. I used to bounce on the end of the bed with him on my arms. He never ever watched it though, but knew the theme tune. Some of these are great, and not all music as well. There are some that are more like sounds too. We'll do more of them soon. They're brilliant. Keep them coming. 85058.
We're going to play some. I don't think we can play this one. Andy Jarvis says we put her Moses basket on the tumble dryer when a small baby, and it calmed her down. Just the rumble of the tumble dryer. I think I've heard that before, actually. Yeah.
You can get ones that vibrate. You can put a little battery in and they vibrate. Yeah.
Well, there we are. We're going to play some
Fancy
of these a little bit later on. 85058 at BBC 5 Live. Now, there was an interesting conversation just towards the end of Nihal's show about this. The Mayor of Bristol says the people of the city should choose what, if anything, replaces that statue of slave trader Edward Colston that was torn down recently. That is after a sculpture of Black Lives Matter protester Jen Reid was placed on the plinth by sculptor Mark Quinn. The artist says it isn't meant to be permanent, while Jen says people should look beyond the statue itself.
It's about what it represents rather than being about me. It's about educating people, people learning, keeping that conversation going, and that's what it stands for. It's about moving forward and making history, which is very important.
Well, Miles Chambers is Bristol's first poet laureate. He's written and spoken extensively on the legacy of the slave trade in the city and on Colston in particular. Miles, hi to you.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. So look, this is a 3D replica then of Jen Reid of a pose that she adopted on the day of the protest. She stood on the plinth and raised her arm in the air, and the sculptors kind of just encapsulated that moment. It's a powerful statue. What do you make of the fact it's now there?
Well, I've had a look at the image, and it's a beautiful image, isn't it? It's really powerful and significant. I mean, what do I make of it? To me, it seems like an obvious reaction, and I've said that the Colston statue should, since it came down, should be replaced by some kind of memory of the sons and daughters of those that suffered in the diaspora. And I heard about the fact that Jenny Reid's statue had replaced Colston, and I thought, well, shouldn't we all decide what should go up there? But I've now actually seen the image, and it's a great statement. And I'm with the Black Lives Matter movement, and obviously I was there on Sunday the 7th. I couldn't make it this Sunday. I was away. I worried that it would be, is it a movement or a moment? And the fact that that statue's there and what that represents, whether it's there permanently or not, but it's great. It looks proper.
it certainly encapsulates that moment, doesn't it? When Bristol finally came, or some people in Bristol finally came to terms with that confused legacy, really, of Edward Colston. Can you just briefly remind us, because he was a slave trader, but he pumped a lot of money into the city, and therefore a lot of there are people who've been to the school named after him now who are very conflicted about all that. Could you just explain that for us a little bit, Miles?
Yeah, Edward Colston was, to some, he made thousands, if not millions of pounds in today's terms from, he was involved, there was a director of the Africa Company, which was the biggest company in this country, if not in the world, which traded in slaves, the transatlantic slavery. And Edward Colston was the director. He would have amassed shares in that company, would have made a lot of money from there. I think we're talking about 120,000 slaves, which he was involved with, and at least 20% of those would have died at sea or been thrown overboard as excess baggage or whatever, that they could claim them back on insurance. And I'm making that point because they were just seen as stock, as commodity, and you could trade that back. He took a lot of his money and he built schools, he built almshouses, stuff for the homeless. He obviously donated the hall, and so to some, it might appear at that time that he's a great person a lot, but he amassed that money off the sweat and blood of slaves.
Sorry, Mark. So this now is doing what the artist wanted to do, which he said he wants to start a conversation with this. The statue wasn't meant to be permanent, but this is really interesting because you said at the start that people of Bristol should decide. The mayor, who previously said the statue of Colston was an affront, so he was no supporter of the Colston statue. He says this, and this is really interesting, and this leads me to my final question to you, really. He says the future of the plinth must be decided by the people of Bristol. It's critical we all do it together. He said it's got to be a home in the city to those who are elated that the statue was pulled down, those who sympathise with its removal but are dismayed at how it happened, and those who feel that its removal, they've lost a piece of the Bristol they know and therefore themselves. So this statue, this new one's polarising. How on earth, Miles, people of Bristol, how on earth are they going to find something that appeals to everybody?
Well, I don't think it should. I don't think that every statue we put up should represent that. And that there are lots of things around Bristol that will appease those different types of people. And I don't think that statue should. I think that the idea that somebody has decided to put that up was what when I hadn't seen it, I thought, well, after democracy crying out that it should come down, and that's for 20 years trying to pull Colston's statue down, or at least have some kind of reaction to him being celebrated. But I thought, well, yeah, maybe the people should decide. But now I've seen that image, and I understand it. Jenny's a modern black person that stood up in the Black Lives Matter and protested against specifically stemmed and was created from the slave trade and has followed, haunted, persecuted black people all the way along. And it's such a striking image. And what that image now does, now I see, is remind us that we are not, this isn't a moment, it's a movement. What are we going to do? What is the discourse? What is the discussion? What new things are we going to implement and change to eradicate this racism? So to me personally, I love it. I love it.
Well, that's the final question. In a word, in one answer, in one word, should it stay?
Yes.
I kind of pin you down to that, really, didn't I?
I contradicted myself. The idea that someone has put it there without discussing it democratically may seem like a contradiction. I've seen it now. I've seen what it stands for. I think those black people and those that sympathise with Black Lives Matter and diaspora need something in Bristol to remind what we went through and what we're still now going through. And Jen says it all. And I think we can have other statues elsewhere to appease these other people. And I'm sure there's statues over there that I might not like or that someone else likes and this and that. I don't think that whatever place is Colston can do all that.
But we can have a whole new debate now, though, about having statues that don't appeal to people might end up being pulled down again. It could be a vicious circle. But Miles, it's been a really interesting... It has been an interesting conversation. And
thank you.
Yeah, I think you've convinced yourself during it as well. Good to speak to you, Miles. Thank you. Thanks very much. Miles Chambers there, Bristol's first poet laureate. If you've got any thoughts on that story, 85058 at BBC 5 Live. Let's get the headlines now, 4:35.
On digital, BBC Sounds, smart speaker and online.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
And the world is ill prepared for a dramatic fall in the number of children being born, according to a new report. 23 nations, including Spain and Japan, are expected to see their populations halve by the year 2100. For the first time, Boris Johnson has committed to an independent inquiry into the handling of the coronavirus pandemic, but the Prime Minister said it wouldn't be carried out while the outbreak was still ongoing. A further 85 people have died with coronavirus in the UK. It takes the total number of deaths to 45,053. And the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, says there are no plans to make people wear face coverings in offices in England. They become mandatory in shops in England at the end of next week and are already compulsory in shops in Scotland. That's the news. Dallas here with the sport.
Afternoon, England have made 3 changes to the squad for the second test against West Indies. Captain Joe Root is back after paternity leave and replaces Joe Denley, who's disappointed with the bat recently.
The way that he's managed some very difficult periods, batting long periods of time. Of course, he'll want to have gone on and made bigger scores, but he enabled guys below him to go and do that. It's a shame that he misses out, but it's one of those difficult things that you have to deal with in professional sport.
James Anderson and Mark Wood are rested, with Sam Curran and Ollie Robinson included, but Root wouldn't confirm whether Stuart Broad will start at Old Trafford tomorrow. 4 more matches in the Premier League this evening and a huge task facing Bournemouth. They gave themselves hope of avoiding the drop with a win over Leicester last time out, but are still 3 points from safety, and their record against Manchester City isn't much of an inspiration for them this evening, Alistair Bruce Ball.
It's certainly not at the Etihad Stadium, and that's why that incredible second half comeback win against Leicester on Sunday was so important, because even if it does go against them tonight, they will still have a chance of beating the drop by winning their last 2 games against Southampton and Everton. Now, their 4 results here in the Premier League have been defeats: 5-1, 4-0, 4-0 and 3-1. And I think they'd be very happy if one of those rested tonight by Manchester City is Raheem Sterling, because he has scored an absolute hatful against them. Pep Guardiola has an FA Cup semi-final to think about on Saturday night, so expect plenty of changes, but whoever plays, this is going to be an almighty challenge for Bournemouth.
It's coming up in 5 Live Sport from 5:30. And speaking of unenviable records, Spurs boss Jose Mourinho will be looking to end one tonight. In 7 attempts, he's never managed a team to victory at St James's Park. But he has got a soft spot for Newcastle and their former boss and his old mentor at Barcelona, Sir Bobby Robson.
I learned with him how to share and how to respect the people there, the mentality, what society is historically in Newcastle and around the Newcastle area. So a part of my awful record at St James's Park is a club that I have lots of respect.
We'll also keep you up to date with Burnley against Wolves before our second commentary game, Arsenal versus Liverpool. Reading women have made a double signing from Arsenal. Striker Daniel Carter and Scotland international Emma Mitchell have moved to the Royals. 7 players and 2 staff members have tested positive for coronavirus in the second round of testing in Rugby Union's Premiership. 856 people across the 12 clubs were tested on Monday. Olympic medalist Beth Tweddle says there's no place for bullying or abuse in the sport that I love, amid widespread allegations in gymnastics. Several gymnasts have recently come forward detailing their experiences in the sport, with British Gymnastics announcing an independent review. Katie Glynn and Zach Jones have been appointed new assistant coaches for the England women's and men's hockey teams, respectively. That's it for now from BBC Sport.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live on digital, BBC Sounds, smart speaker and online.
The M5's been closed since about 2:20. It's because of an accident where a lorry is across all 3 lanes. It jackknifed on the southbound side at Worcester at Junction 7 through to the M50 at Junction 8. On the northbound side, there are also 2 lanes closed. Long delays taking you about half an hour now on the northbound side. And the M5 in Bristol on the southbound side, 18 to 19 from the M49. A tanker's broken down and one of the lanes is closed. The M56Q still there in Cheshire, eastbound from 15 at the M53 to 14 at Chester Services. It's through the roadworks, but long delays. And then the M1 in Bedfordshire northbound. A lorry having a tyre change, Junction 12 at Flitwick with 1 lane closed. Warner Merchant 5 Live Travel.
And I know we're doing songs or bits of music that help soothe your kids, get them to sleep when they were small, but this one, I've got to mention this one because we've got the same book and it's wonderful. It's Bill in Bromley, who says, my daughter Sophia only falls asleep when I read the book How to Catch a Star by Oliver Jeffers. I started reading it to her when she was 6 months old. It was the only thing that sent her to sleep. She's now 7 3/4 and she still requests that I recite it every night as she drifts off. I must have read it over 2,500 times. It is the loveliest thing. It's one of those books that you can read in a really soft, lovely bedtime voice as well. It's so sweet. Yeah. And we've still got it. I won't throw it away. I refuse to because it reminds me of, they say when they're tiny. Well, no, I was going to say they're tiny and cute when they actually go to sleep. They're not cute when they refuse, but when they eventually drift off and you look at them and their little eyelashes and, you know, their little rosy cheeks and you think, how sweet. And all of the stress of actually trying to get them into that state has been forgotten.
Well, a lot of people are using a lot of different music to try and... Top of the Tots, I'm calling it. And Paul in Banbury's as well. He says, Top of the Tots, my daughter, Eloise, would only settle as a toddler by Nirvana's Nevermind album being played. She would sing along until she fell asleep. She's going to be quite a cool child, or she might be an adult now, who knows. And also, Nick in Kingston says, I used to hum the Imperial March from Star Wars on my wife's tummy when she was pregnant. It helped to settle him as a baby. But now as a teenager, there's a lot of anger.
Yeah, no, I can imagine that. Yeah. Standard teenage behaviour. And Bridget says, my baby boy used to be rocked to sleep while I hummed Singing in the Rain. The do-do-do-do bit over and over again. I well up when I hear it still. He's 12 now and taller than me, says Bridget. There's a few of these that we've dug out the bits of music for as well, so we'll bring you those very soon.
Here we go. Give it to them. The Premier League.
Oh my goodness, what a goal! What a goal that is! Oh, what a finish! He hit it sweetly right, put it into the bottom left-hand corner.
Later today, it's a double bill. From 6, Manchester City take on Bournemouth. And with an 8:15 kickoff, Arsenal against Liverpool.
This is your football station.
That's how it happens.
This is 5 Live. This is BBC Radio 5 Live. Available on the BBC Sounds app. 5 Live Drive with Anna Foster and Tony Livesey.
See, I didn't see you pointing then, so that's why I began to talk.
I didn't even hear that you began to talk. They'd already got rid of you, don't worry.
Wait, I need some kind of subtitles. You know, that audio description off the telly. Anna is now pointing.
It all sounded very neat at our end.
Yeah, all right, okay. Good, I shouldn't have said that then. Just forget I said it. Now, Nicola Sturgeon is calling for hyper-vigilance as Scotland begins its most significant relaxation of coronavirus measures so far. From today, hairdressers and barbers, cinemas, bars, restaurants, tourist attractions and childcare settings can reopen and communal worship will be allowed. But the Scottish First Minister says she won't hesitate to close pubs and restaurants again if the virus starts to spread. Do it safely, seems to be the message. Peter Kearney is the spokesperson for the Catholic Church in Scotland. Hello, Peter.
Hi, Tony.
Hiya. And Celia Joyce is from the Dovecut Studios in Edinburgh. It's an arts centre and gallery which reopened today. Hi, Celia. Peter,
hello,
first of all... Hi, Celia. Good. You can hear us great. Peter, first of all, for you, how different an experience is it now going to church than it was before the pandemic?
I think it'll be extremely different, almost unrecognisable for what it was before. First of all, there'll be a booking system in place. That will be very odd. People will have to use a system perhaps like Eventbrite or the parish website to book a slot to go on a Sunday or during the week. That's to allow the tracking and tracing that the government want us to have in place. Beyond that, another big difference will be masks. We'll all have to wear a mask. Now, in Scotland, we've had to do that. Go to the shops for the last couple of weeks, and it does make the experience very different. Hand sanitizer, social distancing, no holy water, no hymn singing, no collection plates, no sign of peace. Lots of things that would be very normal and very familiar to Catholics going to Mass just won't be there. So yes, it's going to feel extremely different.
The church, like every other organisation, has had to adapt to the pandemic, and many people are looking at the way they operate now and thinking, could this be a sea change? For example, a lot of companies talking about working from home, and there has been a lot of success, hasn't there, for virtual church services. Are you worried that fear of what might happen might keep people at home? How important to the church is, I guess is the question, Peter, is communal worship?
Central, absolutely central, and I would say irreplaceable. You're right, the online live streaming of masses and other services has been very, very successful, and there are good numbers when it comes to the viewing audience for that. But it's been more of a comfort than a replacement. It hasn't really replaced, and our sense is that people will want to get back into a church, no matter how controlled, curtailed or different that feels. For the last couple of weeks, the church doors have actually been open, allowing people in for private prayer, and the numbers there suggest that people want to come back. They want to be in a sacred space, and it's not quite the same watching it at home or on a laptop as it would be when you're in that special sacred place of the inside of a church.
Peter, stay there please, will you? I'll just bring Celia in. Celia, how's it gone today?
Great, yeah. We've had about half the numbers we might have had into an exhibition on its opening day, but the public have been fantastic. So Dovecot Studios had an exhibition almost ready to go before lockdown, and so what we've done is hold back that exhibition. So it's quite exciting. We've got a new exhibition on essentially mid-century modern, a lifestyle revolution, and I think people have been locked in their home and want some of the inspiration that they can get from this show. So yeah, it's been great.
I think people have been clamouring for culture, haven't they, throughout all this, and you're providing it. Has everybody, Celia, obeyed the rules?
They've been fantastic. We've put, as the church has, the extra cleaning, the deep cleaning, the sanitisers, the masks. So when you come into Dovecot, we're in Infirmary Street in the middle of Edinburgh. You walk into the foyer, the shop, first of all. And so, of course, all of those rules are really helpful, I think, to reassure everyone when they walk in that they're wearing a mask, our colleagues are wearing masks, and then they can go into the exhibition. But a bit like you were saying about the church, it's a bespoke experience. It's almost like having your own private view, because we're keeping the numbers very low to make sure that we're keeping everything safe, because the last thing we want is to have people worried.
And I'm sure that you'll have an exhibition down the line about the effects of pandemic and the effects on culture, I'm sure. Peter, just listening to that, obviously Dovecot is a commercial enterprise, and we've seen a lot of high street retailers suffer during the pandemic. Now, I probably a naive question, I don't know. Are there any parallels at all with the church? For example, you talked about it's important people come back to communal worship. If they don't in numbers, if attendance drops off, could we see churches closing? What's the correlation there? How does it work?
There is a correlation, yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, the idea of activities being communal, whether that be in a church, in a place of worship, or a gallery, is absolutely the same. We human beings are social. We want to do things together like that, not in isolation or atomized. An area where there will be a knock-on effect, it's hard to calculate now, would be income. If I can use a sporting analogy, churches are a bit like lower league football clubs. We don't have TV money, so we rely entirely on what we get at the gate. And I don't know if I mentioned it, but one of the things we will not have when we return are collection plates. So we're hoping people will make donations either online or sign up for regular giving via the bank. That's an area where there probably will have to be a sea change, because we've now had almost 4 months without the regular income that normally comes from the weekly collections.
Use it or lose it is in its crudest sense, is what you're saying.
Well, yes, absolutely. And we would like people to move away, to be honest, from the idea of putting something into the plate when you come through the doors on a Sunday or any other day, and setting up a more regular, steady giving.
You prefer a direct debit, Peter? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Exactly. It's like so many organisations, we need the financial security of that.
Well, look, good luck to both of you in your chosen fields going forward. Peter Kearney, thanks, Peter, spokesperson for the Catholic Church in Scotland, and Celia Joyce there from Dovecut Studios in Edinburgh. It is just gone 4:49.
Yeah, just to remind you, it's a shorter than usual drive today. We're off at 5:30 to make way for Kelly Cates. 2 live Premier League commentaries tonight. It's Manchester City against Bournemouth at 6 o'clock, and then Arsenal against Liverpool at 8:15. And you'll hear it all live here on 5 Live. We're going to open the music box for a few minutes, because we were asking about songs, bits of music that you used to use to soothe your kids when they were young. And some of them are, quite standard fare, and some of them are a little bit left field, like this one from Alan in Renfrew, who says, we used Radiohead's No Surprises for both of our boys. Lovely wee xylophone to give a lullaby feel. Don't think there's any long-term damage done that we're aware of. Because the thing is, when you listen to it like this, actually it sounds beautiful.
It does.
I suppose it's only when you're an adult and you hear the words, you know how dark it is, that it feels a little different.
Definitely
No, it does. It really does. I can see why this would soothe a child. Bit of Tom York there.
Impress most people, this would. Let's change the pace a bit, shall we?
Okay.
Now, this is from Alan. He says, from about 12 weeks we played Here Comes the Sun by the Beatles once a day to the bump. By the end, it was driving me insane. When my son arrived, we played it for the first time to reduce his crying. No difference whatsoever. Complete waste of my sanity.
Do you know, they say you're supposed to do that as well, have like certain bits of music, or that the baby gets to know your voice in the bump and then it soothes them. Yeah, clearly not. Sorry, Alan. Look, let's crank it up even more. This one's from Charlotte in Cumbria. Strange, she says, but I swear it's true. I watched so much Friends when I was pregnant. When Arthur finally arrived, it was so incredible. Nothing could settle him down except us singing the Rembrandts. I'll be there for you.
I bet that's true for a lot of people, actually, yeah. What's that song in Friends, Anna? I nearly picked it for the end of the show where they sing to get the baby to sleep. Baby Get Back. Baby Get Back.
Oh, Baby Got Back.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ross and Rachel sing it to their baby.
Oh, do they? I don't remember that.
Oh, do you not?
Well, you see, the thing is, I've never done the Friends. I did it first time round, so a lot of it is sort of lost in the wilds of my memory now.
Yeah.
So Mix-a-Lot, that's it.
That's it. I like big books and I cannot lie.
And you chickened out as well. I wish you'd played that. That would have been great. Thank you for these. Thank you for these suggestions, by the way, and keep yours coming as well, particularly if they're a bit out there. 85058. Now, I'm looking forward to this. You remember on the programme last week, we spoke to Emma in Hertfordshire. Now, Emma was describing that because of lockdown rules, she hadn't been able to visit her 92-year-old mother in her care home for 4 months. And a visit was planned. Here's what Emma told us last week.
I feel really very excited, but now I'm starting to dread I'm going to get ill or something before. It's quite overwhelming, actually. I mean, I saw her on one of the weekly or bi-weekly FaceTimes this week, and she was not in good shape, but she does vary from week to week. And she just doesn't understand at all why I haven't been to see her, and she can't really work out the FaceTime, but the home has been wonderful trying to make it work as much as possible, and they shut down very early. They're very careful, but I am just desperate to see her face to face. I really am, and I think knowing the home, I'm sure it'll be done in a nice way.
Well, I'm really glad to say that Emma's back. Hello again, Emma.
Hello, Anna.
How did it go?
Well, just as I predicted, the care home did do it absolutely beautifully. When I arrived, I didn't have to go through the home. They made sure I was wearing a mask, had some ready for me, gave me gloves. They took my temperature. They made me fill out a form confirming that I hadn't been ill. And then they took me through to an area that they'd made in this sort of semi-out building, which they'd made nice by putting a carpet on the floor. I think it used to be it really did used to be a stables. A nice easy chair that was obviously very wipe downable, a round table, and they put some flowers there. And then when all was ready, they wheeled in Mum.
And how was that?
It was kind of... I can't even explain it. I mean, part of it was she was obviously very confused with what was going on, and it was a moment where you sort of, I kind of held my breath. But then almost the best part, which I thought was so thoughtful, they actually left me alone with her for half an hour, because I thought that we might have a carer staying in, so there was huge trust. And I didn't breach that trust by touching Mum or anything. I kept my face mask on and all that kind of thing, so I just don't want to risk it, because she's so fragile. I mean, she just seemed more fragile than ever. And they'd left a phone on the table with a number that you could ring if anything happened or if someone needed to be called. So it took a bit of getting used to, and it was kind of happy and sad, is what I want to say. It was happy because Mum is still here after 4 months. She's still got her critical faculties in as much as she knows she's confused. But it was sad because you can see the price has been for not having had any family or friend visits at all. She almost spoke about having been lonely, and it was very difficult to try and get her to smile or to do anything. She just seemed so confused by everything. And I've been thinking about that since, and I've suddenly realised that she spent 4 months in a world without a smile, because I've realised if the carers and me, and we've all got a face mask on, the poor elderly people, they never see a smile anymore.
That's a good point.
But it was kind of precious, and I think now I've got a slot every week for the next 3 weeks to do the same thing. So I'm kind of hoping that Mum will get used to a new normal and be able to sort of re-engage with the fact that she is going to see me, and something of previous life is going to come back a bit.
Yeah. Emma, do you know, thank you so much for coming back and telling us about it. And I'm really glad that it went as well as it could have done. And good luck to you and good luck to her. And I hope you get to see much more of her.
Thank you, Emma.
Thanks a lot, Emma. Take care. That's Emma from Hertfordshire. As I say, remember on the programme last week, she promised to come back and tell us how that visit went. And it's a visit I know that lots of people will be doing around the country as well at the moment.
Oh, great to catch up. That was brilliant. Now, if you were listening yesterday, you might remember the BBC's launching a free website called Tiny Happy People. It's for parents and carers with children up to 4 years old. And it includes simple activities, games, tips on developing language and communication skills. Today, we're going to talk, amongst other things, about the importance of nursery rhymes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Once I caught a fish alive. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then I let it go again.
Why, Mummy?
Why did you let it go? Because it bit my finger, so which finger did it bite? Which finger did it bite?
This little one on the right.
This little finger on my right.
Professor Claire Wood joins us, who teaches developmental psychology at Nottingham Trent University. Hi, Claire.
Hello there.
It's interesting, isn't it, that these methods that have been used now for generations can still elicit a response from a young child. Is there any evidence that they've actually developed, modernised nursery rhymes over the years, or are we still sticking to the old stuff?
No, well, obviously each generation create their own new nursery rhymes, and lots of parents make up their own rhymes for their children, and that's a brilliant idea, because anything that is about... We've got a bias in our memories where we like to hook into things that are about ourselves, so whenever children hear things about events that they can relate to or their own selves, they get really excited about them. But there are a few new ones that come up every now and again, but generally we're still retelling a lot of the same nursery rhymes that our parents told to us and so on from years ago.
They're all simple and effective, but this is a serious question, which sounds a bit daft, but when you're trying to communicate to a young child, does it have to have a narrative arc? Because they do tell very simple stories, don't they? Or
they absolutely
can you just deal in nonsense to a child as well at a certain age?
Oh, nonsense is good too. Nonsense is good. Anything that's got a strong rhythmic component, and ideally something that's got a rhyme at the end of the sentences, they're going to naturally draw the children's attention. And it's all about sharing what these sorts of, if you like, these mini stories set to music do, is they teach children about rhythm and rhyme, and they teach children about patterns that repeat in spoken language. So even though you may be using nonsense words or lots of silliness or lots of made-up aspects, what the children are getting getting out of that, not realising it, is the skill of being able to spot patterns in spoken language, which we call phonological awareness, but the children don't need to know that. But crucially, that skill is what underpins a lot of the literacy skills that they need later on in their development. And we know that children who have got a really strong knowledge of nursery rhymes from their early years have stronger phonological skills, and they go on to have better reading and writing outcomes when they do start school.
Claire, we've only got 20 seconds left. Is it important to have a human interface, or can you do this in the modern era on a laptop, that kind of thing?
Do you know what? Human is best. Children need that point of shared attention. They need those relationships. But a device will always help to supplement that. But face-to-face is always best.
Claire, good to talk to you. Thank you, Professor Claire Wood there from Nottingham Trent University. Robin Guilford says singing Little Old Wine Drinker Me by Dean Martin always took the trick getting Livy to sleep when she was young, which goes to show.
Yeah, Ahmed in Leighton says my son would kick away in his mother's belly to the EastEnders theme tune. He's 17 now, listens to hip-hop. The EastEnders theme tune has him leaving the room. Maybe he didn't like it back then after all. Keep them coming, please.
On digital, BBC Sounds, smart speaker and online.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
BBC News at 5 o'clock. This is Jane Royce. The Prime Minister's confirmed there will be a review into the handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. China has attacked the UK's decision to drop Huawei from its 5G networks. And the cleaners who exterminated Banksy's underground rats. Boris Johnson has, for the first time, committed to an independent inquiry into the coronavirus outbreak. Details of how it would work and when it would get underway are yet to be disclosed. The Prime Minister made clear it would not be right to devote huge amounts of official time to an inquiry now, when the UK was in the middle of a pandemic. He was speaking as another area of Lancashire has seen a spike in the number of cases of COVID-19. As our health editor, Hugh Pym, reports.
The Lancashire borough of Pendle is the latest area to report a sharp increase in virus cases. Officials are calling on residents to wear face coverings in all enclosed public spaces to help to reduce the number of infections in order to keep the area out of lockdown. In neighbouring Blackburn and Darwin, the council's public health team have been praised by the Health Secretary Matt Hancock, who said they were doing a fantastic job. He said national officials had supported the council with extra testing capacity, but that it was the local authority which had taken the initiative with new measures, including reducing the size of household gatherings.
The Health Secretary Matt Hancock has said there are no plans to make people wear face coverings in offices in England. They become mandatory in shops in England at the end of next week, and Mr Hancock suggested this would remain the case for the foreseeable future. A further 85 people with coronavirus have died in the UK. It takes the total number of deaths to 45,053. £5 million has been raised in one day to help people fleeing from conflict and instability around the world who now face the threat of COVID-19. The Disasters Emergency Committee Coronavirus Appeal was launched last night across television and radio. China's ambassador in London has attacked the government's decision to ban Huawei from the UK's 5G networks, suggesting there could be economic consequences. Liu Xiaoming said the move undermined trust between both countries. Here's our diplomatic correspondent James Landale.
British officials knew the decision to ban Huawei from the UK's 5G networks would produce a robust response from China, and Ambassador Liu did not disappoint. He said the UK had succumbed to pressure from what he called China bashers. The decision, he argued, was not taken independently, but because of American pressure. As a result, it would be difficult for Chinese companies to have the confidence to increase their investment in the UK. The question now is how or whether China will match this rhetoric with any substantive retaliation.
Researchers in the US are warning that the world is ill-prepared for large falls in fertility rates, which could have a jaw-dropping impact on societies. A team at the University of Washington in Seattle says nearly every country could have shrinking populations by the end of the century. It predicts 23 nations, including Spain and Japan, could see their populations halve. The Home Secretary Priti Patel's urged French authorities to do more to stop migrants in small boats crossing the Channel. More than 2,500 people have reached the Kent and Sussex coast so far this year, with 180 arriving on Sunday, a record daily number. Our Home Affairs correspondent Danny Shaw reports.
Speaking to the Commons Home Affairs Committee, Priti Patel said the number of migrants reaching the UK in small boats from France was shocking, appalling and unacceptably high. She said fundamental changes were needed to end the viability of the route across the Channel, including stronger enforcement on the part of the French authorities. They're not intercepting boats which are just 250 yards away from the French coast, the Home Secretary said. The committee heard discussions were taking place between the two countries about what measures were allowed under maritime laws.
It's understood that the cleaners who removed a work by Banksy from a London Underground train didn't realise he was behind it. The piece, which used his trademark rats to encourage the use of face coverings, was painted inside a Circle Line carriage. Transport for London's invited Banksy to recreate the message in a more suitable location. The art critic Rachel Campbell-Johnston can't believe it was removed.
It is a thing of the moment, and it's a Banksy piece of work which is done. Its greatest strength is in our commercial art world. Banksy gives out it for free. Financially speaking, they were absolutely bonkers to clean it up.
In the city, the 100 share index closed up 113 points at 6,293. And the weather, any lingering rain and drizzle will fade to leave a dry night for most areas, but staying rather cloudy. Temperatures will drop to 16 Celsius in London, 14 in Belfast and 13 in Edinburgh and Cardiff. That's the BBC News at 5:05.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live on digital, BBC Sounds, smart speaker and online.
The M5 is being closed in Worcestershire on the southbound side at junction 7 Worcester to 8 at the M50. It was an accident which happened at 2:20 this afternoon. It was a lorry which jackknifed. It's across all three lanes and there are queues on the opposite side. Northbound, 2 lanes also closed out of the 3. Then we've got a massive closure of the M6 in the West Midlands northbound at junction 6 Spaghetti Junction, with the queues backing up all the way to the A38M now. That's causing a problem there. But the other accident is on the southbound side at junction 5 at Castle Bromwich, and all traffic's being held, so the queues are backing up to junction 6 at Spaghetti Junction. So 2 problems in the same area. That's causing a lot of congestion if you're heading out of Birmingham this evening. The M62 eastbound, junction 21 at Milne Row through to 22 at Rishworth Moor. There's a breakdown in one of the lanes. The M5 in Bristol at junction 18 for the M49. A tanker's broken down. They've closed a lane for recovery. And the M275, those repairs still going on northbound. That's from junction 2 at the Rudmore roundabout, heading up to the M27 at Portsmouth. Junction 12 of the M27, the repairs still going on there. And the M14 Warwickshire on the southbound side, junction 16 at Henley and Arden. There's a lane closed now for a breakdown. Legend, 5
Thank you, Warner. It's a short programme tonight, only, less than half an hour now, because you've got 2 commentaries to enjoy. Bournemouth's trip to Manchester City and Liverpool's visit to Arsenal later on as well. But before then, we're going to squeeze a bit more music. It's kind of generally music. I'm not sure we're going to play Louise and Crosby's suggestion, although I do like it. We found putting the cooker extractor hood on worked like magic to calm our screaming daughter in seconds. Within a couple of minutes, she was in the deepest sleep. We thought it was a one-off, but it had exactly the same effect on the second daughter. I'm sure nowadays you can get apps, like white noise apps, to soothe them to sleep.
Yeah, I think Wayne Rooney famously used to use them, didn't he? We've had plenty of vacuum cleaners. This one's interesting. This shows you the downside of all this. When our daughter Annie was 6 years old, she loved and listened to Katie Melua to fall asleep. So when she came to the local arena, we were very excited to get tickets. But what we didn't account for was that by the second song, Annie had fallen asleep. Which is good. And also, Shane in Dunfermline, just let it go. He says, I used to play my son Reese the audio of a beluga whale singing Perfect Day by Lou Reed. It didn't make him sleep, it just left him disappointed and irritable like me. That was yesterday's show.
Yes,
there you go.
And everybody else, the many listening if they've come back today. We're going to do some more of those. We'll hear some more of them as well before 5:30. Songs, bits of music, whatever it was, that managed to soothe your kids to sleep and relaxation when they were little.
On BBC Two.
I am not against women working outside the home.
1970s America.
But what I am against is the women's liberation movement.
A battleground like no other.
Our movement is about fighting the oppression of all women.
We do not want housewives thinking that we are against them.
We are against them.
with Academy Award winner Kate Blanchett.
This fight is not about equality.
Mrs. America
We don't get to decide how the battle lines are drawn.
continues tonight at 9 on BBC Two, and all episodes streaming now on BBC iPlayer.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live, available on the BBC Sounds app. 5 Live Drive with Anna Foster and Tony Livesey.
Now, the world is set to see far fewer children being born in the future. This has come from researchers at the University of Washington, who say the reason is that more women are staying in education and work and have greater access to contraception. They're warning that the impact of ageing populations could be jaw-dropping.
Yeah, 23 nations, including Spain, Italy and Japan, could see their populations drop by more than a half by the end of the century. Here in the UK, the population is expected to peak at 75 million in 2063 before it falls to 71 million by 2100. It's expected by then there'll be as many people turning 80 as there are being born.
Well, Anna Hughes is an environmental campaigner and has decided she doesn't want any children. And Tracy Lewis is a mum of 13. Hello, both.
Hi there. Hello, good evening. Hannah.
Hi, it's lovely to talk to you both. Anna, to you first of all. We said that you were an environmental campaigner. Is that your main reason for not wanting to have children, or is it not quite as simple as that? Are there different things at play?
Well, there are always loads of reasons for things like this. It's not a straightforward decision, but yeah, the environment really has played a massive part in my thinking, and it shapes the choices that I make in life. It's something I was quite aware of when I was growing up, actually. The concept of an ever-growing population on a finite planet with finite space and limited resources, it kind of didn't make sense to me to add to that. And as I got older and grew more aware of climate issues, I realised that, if I'm trying to reduce my carbon footprint and be as low impact as I possibly can in all areas of my life, then actually choosing not to have a family is part of that.
Yeah. I have to ask this, and I realise it's a really annoying question that I bet you do get asked, but do you think you're likely to change your mind?
Well, I made this decision when I was 18 years old, and I'm now 37, so it's quite unlikely that I will change my mind. Of course, people have told me through the years that I will. But no, I've even grown more certain that I have made the right decision. And of course, it doesn't mean I won't have a family. If I do decide to have a family, then I can always adopt. So it's not like I don't like kids or I am anti people having families. It's just, for me, it makes far more sense in terms of our environment, in terms of our climate, in terms of our future, not to add to a growing population.
Yeah. And Tracy, when you had your first child, were you expecting to go on to have 13? Was it always your plan to have a big family?
When I expected my first baby, which was Carly, I was 19 years old, and when I met my husband Pete at 17, I was very much a paternal person from a very young age. Always been around babies growing up, and when Pete and I was together, we first got together, we talked about about 4 children, and we had it off to a final having 4 children. We said, Tracy being very maternal, we'll go on to have number 5 baby, but I never thought I'd have 13 children. But the fact that I met a very caring husband who's been there absolutely all the way, he's there to support me, and we've had the 13 children, and it's never a dull moment.
No, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Was there a moment then, Tracy, after 13? Well, clearly there was a moment after 13 because you decided not to go on and have any more. So was that a conscious decision? Did it feel different after 13?
Yes, I had my 13th baby, and I then went to have a 14th, and obviously sadly lost the baby at 4 months. So that was my wake-up call to say, well, I've been very blessed to have 13 healthy children. So that was it. That's why I didn't go try again. I didn't want to put my health at risk, and obviously I want to be there for my kids to grow up. So that was the final. That was enough for me, sort of thing. I've been very, very blessed. Yeah. But
and something like that though is it doesn't matter how many children you've got. Something like that is always a difficult thing to go through, whether you've got children or no children.
Absolutely. I'm very well aware of people who choose not to have children, people, and then obviously women out there who want a child and can't actually have a baby. And my heart goes out to them, because I tell you something, we all have choices in life, and it's got to be for you, and you can't be selfish, because those kids need you all their life, from the minute they're born right through to it. My eldest daughter's 37 tomorrow, actually, and she was born in 1983. And do you know what? They absolutely, the experience of bringing that many children up, I feel so proud that I've got through the other end. Do you understand what I'm saying? 'Cause it's difficult. It's the money side of it, sort of thing. It's challenging every day, sort of thing. You got to keep them fed, keep a roof over the head. And like I said, my whole life was on hold until they all grew up, and I've just come back up for breath now. I'm back at full-time work, and I've never been out of a job. So I think I've done very well, and so has my husband.
Look, it's been really interesting to talk to you both. Thank you so much. Tracy Lewis, who's a mum of 13, and Anna Hughes, who's decided she doesn't want to have any children. It's 14 minutes past 5.
Yes, not long to go on Drive. Just a reminder, we're off early tonight because we've got football commentary on the way. 2 Premier League matches. Manchester City against Bournemouth is first. That's at 6 o'clock. Updates on other games tonight as well, including Burnley against Wolves. And then tonight, Arsenal, 8:15, Arsenal against Liverpool, which will be really interesting. Guy Kilty joins us now from 5 Live Money. Hello, Guy.
Hi, Tony. Hi, how are you?
I'm all right, thank you very much. Yeah, the Chancellor's cuts to VAT kick in as far as hospitality is concerned, Guy, today. So that should mean cheaper eating out for all of us, doesn't it? What exactly is happening?
Well, in theory, yes. So value-added tax, or VAT, that's the tax we pay on most things we buy. Some things are exempt, but it's just built into the price of all sorts of stuff without us really noticing most of the time. And the current rate of VAT is 20%. But in a bid to boost the struggling hospitality sector, the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, announced it was going to be cut for sales by pubs, hotels, cafes, restaurants, and all sorts of other businesses from today to just 5% for the next 6 months. Now, the idea is that those businesses can pass on that VAT cut to customers by lowering their prices and encourage more people to head out and buy stuff as a result. Now, we know that quite a few big chains like KFC, Nando's, Wetherspoons and Pret have committed to cutting their prices from today, but it's not quite that simple for all businesses. I've spoken to a couple of smaller hotel and pub owners